Hamzambo familia. Welcome to the 54 Correspondence Show on the Blackwood Fire Network Media for the 21st century, being on the 5th day of the month of January, the year 2021. I want to welcome each and every one of us to yet another interesting broadcast where we get to dissect African issues, be it social, economic, political affairs, environmental affairs, and all other different spheres of life. My name is Pikes. In case you're joining us for the very first time, you all much welcome, and I want to urge you to check our official website. It's www.blackwoodfirenetwork.com. Once you are on there, you can enjoy easy listening music, some R&B, some hip hop, and a little bit of everything nice in between. And thank you so much for choosing the Blackwood Fire Network. It's always a delight, and we do hope that you also get to learn a thing or two, and you also get to stay entertained, because that is the goal: to inspire, to entertain, to educate, and also to awaken our people globally, and to unite and inspire a collective African consciousness. That is what we are all up to with the Blackwood Fire Network. In case you're wondering why do they do it, or how do they do it, and when and where do they do it, we are actually streaming live from Nairobi studios, and it's actually 34 minutes past 1 p.m. right here in Nairobi. From wherever you might be tuning in from, I do not know what time it is, but I do hope that you are doing well. And I do hope that you're looking forward to a great year 2022. I almost say 2021, 2022. And I do hope that you are also energized at the start of this particular year. Because, when you start great, you also finish great. You cannot really start with a negative kind of an attitude and also hope to finish great. You have to start great so that you can also get to December having had a great year and also a great finish to it. Like I said, my name is Spikes, and thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. And I do hope that you are doing fantastic. Personally, I am doing well. I am doing all right, and I'm feeling optimistic. I like to consider myself an Afro-optimist. So I am optimistic about my personal endeavors. I am also optimistic about the future of the continent of Africa and its people, its cultures, and everything that has to do with our people, not just on the continent of Africa, but even globally. So if you see me being spreading this love and positivity, just know it's because I am really positive about the future of the continent of Africa, and I do hope that we play a role in terms of the awakening of people anywhere in the world. It might be in the USA, it might be in the Caribbean, it might be in South America, it might be right here in Africa, wherever you might find our people anywhere in the world. Much love to you, and I do hope that we shall all be able to make it. And sometimes, when you're in a class and you're told by the teacher that not everyone here might actually make it, that might be really disappointing. And it is to find or to enjoy this bright future talking about, but that does not mean, that does not stop us from continuing and spreading love and positivity across the continent to our people and worldwide to our people wherever they might be at. This is a show where we get to discuss different African issues, and we also get to build. We get to build together. Someone was asking me whether we have African think tanks. Yes, they are, but they are not. Their voices are not as audible. We do have African think tanks, and I also like to consider the 54 corresponding show as an African think tank, where we do not just discuss the challenges that are facing our people on the continent, but we also get to discuss about the opportunities, the solutions that might also be presented to counter these challenges, and also the chances, all the opportunities that will manifest not right now, but even in the future if people decide to work together. So we shall go back a little bit into music, and when we start off the show, I will be taking you all the way to Madagascar, and I'm meeting the people of the Malagasy. We shall be talking a little bit about Madagascar, and then we shall get into the matters of the day, because I have a wonderful show lineup for you, and we do hope that you also keep it Black Fan Network 54 corresponding show, where it's always a good vibe. Yes, once again, welcome to the 54 corresponding show on the Black Fan Network Media for the 21st century, where we also congregate and discuss issues to the African continent, and also get to update you on what's popular, what's happening, what's new. And we do have news from across the continent, from the north to the south, to the west, to the east, and everywhere else in between. My name is Spikes, and I told you a little bit early before there's a tendency that people do sort of forget countries that are island nations on the continent. And this is one of the island countries off the coast on the Indian Ocean. And of course, sometimes people do forget that Madagascar is part of the continent. You will find some people drawing the map of Africa. In many cases, you'll find a map of Africa drawn. But because Madagascar is like it's an island country, you'll find it sort of omitted in some of the maps. But we do claim Madagascar as being part of the continent of Africa. It's a beautiful nation. And I wanted to share with us some words of wisdom from Madagascar. These are some proverbs that have been, these are Madagascar proverbs from Madagascar. And one of them actually reads that if you sell your drum in your own village, if you sell your drum in your own village, you get the money and you keep the sound. If you sell your drum in your own village, you keep the money, you get the money, and you also keep the sound. For me, I think for the meaning, my interpretation of this particular one is that there are some benefits of getting to work with your own people from, it's good, for example, trading with people from the outside. But this is a proverb for me that would also inspire some sort of internal work. And you see, for example, with the continent of Africa, most countries will hear them like Botswana are getting to import a lot of things from the UK. Uganda also getting to import a lot of things from the UK, and also getting to export a few things to the UK, especially agricultural products. But the level of trade is not the same when it comes to African countries getting to interact and selling among themselves or trading among themselves. And therefore, I think if we did have African countries, more African countries getting to trade among themselves, then I do believe maybe we would have much more benefit than we are still having it. Of course, it's good to export to Europe and other different places where these things might be might fetch better prices, but it is also important to look internal, because the African problem is that we want to look outside for the solutions instead of also looking internally. That is what I do feel that, for example, this particular kind of a proverb would actually inspire the same. There's also one which reads, words are like eggs. When they are hatched, they have wings. So words are like eggs. When they are hatched, they have wings. Once you do say some words, you can never take back the words that you have actually said. Some people might apologize. Some people might say forgive and forget and things like that, but your words, once they leave your mouth, in Swahili we do say akimwagika hayazoleki, which means once you actually say something, and once you turn the water on and the tap on really, and the water has started pouring, you cannot really now take it back. It's also the same. Once when it rains, it pours. When it rains, it pours. You cannot really stop the rain, and neither can that water make that rain go back. But what I do know is that our words are very, very much powerful, and of course, this particular year, purpose to take care of the word, how you use your words. It's very, very important that you use the words carefully. So this year, I do know that people use the power of words in many ways. One of the ways in which people use the power of words is a way to manifest, and it's actually something positive. You can really manifest a whole lot and achieve a whole lot using the power of your mouth, and also the power of your mind. But also at the same time, remember, the way you use your mouth, not just be reckless with your words. You can use your words actually to bind yourself, or actually um to liberate yourself, but also to bind yourself. Either the words that you speak, there are different ways, there are different words. For me, I do think once some of them are written and spoken, but there's also that internal conversation that you have with yourself. You're just talking with yourself every other time you're moving along the way and you're going somewhere. You will have a conversation with yourself. But some people also want to do that negative talk with themselves the whole day, and eventually the results will come out and they will actually be negative at the end of the day. Whatever you focus on, then there your energy goes. You focus on the negative, your energy is going to manifest in a negative way, and you're not going to love the outcome. But nonetheless, it's good that we share these proverbs from Madagascar. You might ask me why I'm talking about Madagascar today, but it's because most of the times on the 54 corresponding show, we have not shared enough spotlight on Madagascar. And that is why, apart from the time we did have the whole story about the organics, the COVID organics that were being manufactured and are being made with the Artemisia plant in Madagascar, that whole story then got to disappear. We heard about the numbers escalating of these whole pandemic, but that is much as we have gotten to hear from Madagascar in the recent past. But for today, I am sharing with you some wonderful words of wisdom. Like I said, words are like eggs. Once they are hatched, they have wings. You cannot take back words that you just say. You might apologize or do something, but really those words get to stick. And that is the way life is. There is a lot of power in your words. This is your purpose. In as much as you might purpose to achieve other things, purpose to achieve control, and also purpose to know to choose your words wisely and also talk wisely. Because in some cases, you don't even really have to talk much. In some cases, for me, I think we do have 2 ears and one mouth, simply because we are supposed to be listening more than we are talking. Most of the time, you'll find people who want to talk the whole day, talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But when it comes time for them to listen, they might even be hearing you and they will not be listening. Someone might, there is a difference. For me, I believe there is a difference between hearing and listening. Someone might hear what you just said, but they're not really listening. So that might even escape their attention. They might not get what you were just saying, but they heard you, but really they were not listening. That which is what is done by most people. But I do believe, yes, active and passive listening are skills, and are also getting to communicate your words. It's also very, very important that you also choose to use your words wisely and listen more. Don't just go blabbering and talking this and that. For me, I think you don't even have to be an introvert not to talk a lot, but you have control, and you also do know the power in the use of our mouths or our tongue. But nonetheless, you also do have one more. Let me share one more, which actually reads, you can't cut a louse with one finger. You can't cut a louse with one finger. You have to use two fingers. And of course, I agree with that. And they also do say a man who lets his problems get the better of him is like a man who divorces his wife the first time she makes him angry. even when it comes to relating with people. I know Proverbs are about also teaching us how to relate with people. And this one says that a man who gets, let me just get it again. It says, a man, a man who lets his problems get the better of him is like a man who divorces his wife the first time she makes him angry. People ought to relate better this year. For me, I also choose to be able to relate better with people, because sometimes people might get you angry, and you just get to the fuse is lit. And like I said, control is actually a virtue. Self-control is also actually a virtue. But nonetheless, those are some words of wisdom from a legacy. For me, I know that we also do have words of wisdom from different communities in the continent of Africa. Different communities have their own proverbs, but there is also some similarities in some of these proverbs, and that is why you will find maybe some of these proverbs that are coming from Madagascar are the same proverbs. The people of the coastal region of Kenya, which is Mombasa, and might be the same even for the people of Tanzania, because we all are one people. And knowledge, especially folklore stories and proverbs, they move very, very fast because they are preserved. And that is one of the ways of preserving culture of the African people, through stories, through the folk tales, through the proverbs, through, we also have what you call Vitendawili. There are different many ways. All the stories, oral literature is used really to preserve our culture and also connect people. That is why I believe people should still embrace strongly the culture, and also embrace strongly these are oral literature, and maybe just continue the same legacy of passing them over from one generation to another generation. That is my thinking. But we shall also take a short break again, and I will take a sip of water, and then we shall continue discussing a little bit about Madagascar. Then we shall talk about the roots or the causes of corruption on the continent of Africa, and how we can get to address this particular beast that is ravaging the economies on the continent of Africa. What can be done to deal with this corruption? That is our question for today. Please let us know, engage with us. What can be done to deal with the levels of corruption that have been soaring and got into levels that just incredible? Do let us know what can be done. What solutions do you suggest that could be used to curb corruption on the continent, or to fight corruption on the continent? When we get back, we shall be discussing about Madagascar, and then we shall get on to the main topic of the day, which is curbing or fighting the fight against corruption in the continent of Africa, and which countries are really serious, who is leading the fight in the battlefront, who is doing what in regards to curbing corruption or fighting corruption on the continent of Africa. Yes, welcome back to the Quick for Correspondence show on the Blackwood Financial Radio Media for the 21st century. And it's always a delight to have you tune in and also get to vibe with us as we discuss different issues on the continent of Africa. We were just briefing a little bit with some words of wisdom from Madagascar. And I was saying Madagascar is a beautiful country. And I want to share with us just some simple facts about the country before we get into our main topic of the day, which which is fighting corruption, the fight against corruption on the continent of Africa. Well, right now, we almost do have every country having an anti-corruption commission, most of which never get to do a lot. And but let me share these interesting facts about. Then we shall get into that main conversation.
Welcome to Explorer and thanks for watching. In this video, we're excited to present to you some interesting facts about the beautiful island country of Madagascar. Officially referred to as the Republic of Madagascar, Madagascar is a beautiful African island country located in the Indian Ocean, approximately 400 kilometers off the coast of East Africa. Madagascar got its independence on the 26th of June 1960 and has gradually become one of Africa's finest islands. Madagascar is also rich in culture and bursting with astounding flora and fauna. From fascinating traditions and garments and a history thick with pirates to forests of ancient trees, this island is definitely worth exploring. Madagascar has a population of about 25 million people, and the capital of this island is Antananarivo, which doubles as the country's most populated city. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Although the country has several indigenous languages, the official languages of Madagascar are French and Malagasy. Let's take a closer look with the 10 things you probably didn't know about Madagascar. Number 1. Madagascar is the 4th largest island in the world. As far as islands go, Madagascar is one of the largest in the world, claiming 4th place at 592,800 square kilometers. Ahead of it are Greenland, New Guinea, and Borneo. Madagascar is the 21st largest country in Africa and the 46th in the world in terms of surface area. Its unique biodiversity is attributed largely to the fact that it has been isolated from the neighboring continents for millions of years. Everything was allowed to evolve in relative isolation for millions of years. Because of its unique flora and fauna and its size, it has been affectionately dubbed the 8th continent. Number 2. About 80% of the world's vanilla comes from Madagascar. If you're a fan of all things vanilla, then you'll love Madagascar. A huge amount of the world's real vanilla is grown there. Bourbon
When it comes to farming of vanilla, then I do know that Madagascar.
or black vanilla originates from the northwest of the country. While the vanilla orchid comes from Mexico and is pollinated by a rare bee, the story goes that in 1841, a young French-owned slave on what is today known as the Reunion Island discovered how to pollinate the orchids by hand. It wasn't long until vanilla plantations began to crop up in Madagascar. Today, they export around 1,000 tons of vanilla every year. Number 3. Madagascar was a French colony. Madagascar was given its name by Marco Polo, who was the first European to report its existence. Although the Portuguese arrived next in the 1500s, it was the French who colonized the island and declared French as the official language. In the 1890s, the French set out to suppress the Malagasy language and all British influence. Madagascar finally gained its independence in 1960, although the French influence can still be observed from its cuisine. Common to find pastries and baguettes all over the country, especially in Antirabe. While many people in the city speak French, you'll find it hard to get by in the countryside with any other language besides Malagasy. Number 4. 90% of plants and animal species found in Madagascar are seen nowhere else in the world. Apart from the lemurs, Madagascar is home to a large number of species you won't find anywhere else in the world. In fact, 90% of the wildlife is unique to the island due to its isolation. Go exploring and you'll discover exotic creatures like the carnivorous fossa. Around 3
Apologies for the it's buffering, but I do hope that you also get to see and learn a thing or two about Madagascar. Many people normally do not speak on Madagascar because they have been isolated even till today. You will still find that the affairs of these particular beautiful island country being sort of mostly in isolation. The way they conduct their affairs and the way they do the thing, it's mostly in an isolated kind of a way, but they are trying development-wise. And I was saying some other times that these island countries are relatively lesser corrupt compared to the mainland countries on the continent of Africa. But we shall be getting to that conversation.
Madagascar is home to a large number of species you won't find anywhere else in the world. In fact, 90% of the wildlife is unique to the island due to its isolation. Go exploring and you'll discover exotic creatures like the carnivorous fossa, around 346 species of reptiles, and over 6,000 endemic types of plants and trees. However, one of the biggest threats to the wonderful wildlife is the destruction of the natural habitat, which leaves the island's non-human inhabitants extremely vulnerable. Deforestation, fires, erosion, and alien species are amongst the biggest culprits. Number 5. Madagascar had a mad queen. Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar was a dictatorial sovereign of an island caught in the crosshair of the 19th century European exploration and colonization. Fans of the Flashman series of novels may well have heard of Ranavalona. She thwarted European efforts to gain sway over Madagascar during her 33 years rule, but also focused her energy on brutally eradicating Christians, neighboring kingdoms, and political rivals. So widely were the purges and use of slave labor to construct a vast palace and public works that the island's population fell from 5 million to 2.5 million between 1833 and 1839. One way the queen maintained order was the Tangena ordeal, by which the accused was poisoned and then forced to eat 3 pieces of chicken skin. That or the failure to regurgitate all 3 pieces indicated guilt. Other opponents were simply thrown into vast ravines. Number 6. Madagascar was settled by Asians before mainland Africans. The first humans to settle in Madagascar came from the island of Borneo, which is now divided between the countries of Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia. They arrived between 350 BCE and 550 CE in canoes. They weren't joined by mainland Africans until almost 500 years later. Over time, other Africans, Asians, and European settler groups arrived, each bringing their own unique contributions in canoes. They weren't joined by mainland Africans until almost 500 years later. Over time, other Africans, Asians, and European settler groups arrived, each bringing their own unique contribution to the culture of the island. Number 7. The cuisine of Madagascar reflects its cultural diversity. Foods eaten in Madagascar reflect the influence of Southeast Asia.
What I do see in Madagascar, even with the people there and also the leadership of this country, is that let me just stop by sharing it for a minute. Is that the people, you'll find a mixture of everyone in this particular country getting to also proliferate their culture. But also the French culture is also very big because the French, as you all know, they actually used assimilation of actually making people stop speaking their own language and start speaking in French. And therefore, the French language is also very, very widely spoken in this particular country. That is why you do find people also being very, very keen to also, now go back into readapting in their own cultures. But these are a little bit more on the same. Look at the cuisine. You realize that their cuisine is really also, it has a lot of diversity. There's a lot of diversity in their cuisine, most of which is also borrowed from the Asian styles and also the French styles and also the mainland African style.
Asians, Africans, Indians, Chinese, and European migrants that have settled on the island. The cornerstone of the diet is rice. In fact, the word to eat in Malagasy is mihinambari, which means to eat rice. Rice and local food sources were added by East African migrants, Arab and Indian merchants, and European transatlantic traders. In modern Malagasy cuisine, garlic, onion, ginger, tomatoes, curry, coconut milk, vanilla, cloves, and turmeric are common flavorings. Zebu, a kind of African cattle, is a common meat, and peanuts, greens, bananas, and rum all feature prominently. Madagascar is amongst the world's main suppliers of vanilla, cloves, and lang lang, and also a major supplier of coffee, lychees, and shrimps. Number 8. Madagascar is one of the poorest countries in the world. With an annual per capita income of 652 euros, Madagascar has been constantly all feature prominently. Madagascar is amongst the world's main suppliers of vanilla, cloves, and lang lang, and also a major supplier of coffee, lychees, and shrimps. Number 8. Madagascar is one of the poorest countries in the world. With an annual per capita income of 652 euros, Madagascar has been constantly ranked as one of the poorest countries in the world. After its independence from France, it struggled under the leadership of one incompetent government after another. A series of civil unrest and political chaos ensued. When ex-yogurt peddler Magravalo Manana took over as president in 2001, introducing new currency, rules, and reduced the leadership of one incompetent government after another. A series of civil unrest and political chaos ensued. When ex-yogurt peddler Magravalo Manana took over as president in 2001, introducing new currency, rules, and reduced the country's foreign debt by $20 billion, Madagascar's future looked bright. Unfortunately, he's been ousted from office and the country is sliding back into political chaos. Number 9. Only 11% of the country's roads are paved. Traveling in Madagascar takes time.
Looking at the level of infrastructure in this particular country, of course, when a country is poor, you'll not expect much of
Madagascar is a beautiful African island country located in the Indian Ocean.
I don't know why it is hard to start over, but let me just try to get back to the point where we were. I was just saying that looking at the country's infrastructure, it reminds me of what I was saying of Botswana yesterday, that at independence in the late 1960s, Botswana only had 11 kilometers of a tarmac road. And you can imagine Botswana is big, not really that big, but yeah, Botswana is big, but only having 11 kilometers of tarmac road. It means that this country has come a long way from these late 1960s to what it is right now. And I also do believe in Madagascar. The country is big and the population is not that big at 25 million. For the landmass that they do have, I do believe they can still be able to manage, make good use of their resources. But at the end of the day, we are saying some of the challenges that face the African nations is corruption. You will find a government like this that can be able to organize for the fair compensation or for the fair remuneration of farmers who are farming in things like these vanilla. You'll find that the government is not even really doing right by them, probably by providing the right proper structures, agricultural industry structures, to make sure that they are getting maybe perhaps a lower cost of farm inputs and things like this. What happens is that in most cases, the leaders are really just concerned about their own welfare. But this is why you'll find most African countries being poor. But this has actually been done not by chance, but this is also something that has already been orchestrated, and they are put in poverty. And especially for countries that were colonized by the French. I'm not saying that the English, the countries that were colonized by the British are any better. But I'm saying that what did happen is that with the French colonizing countries, they did not even put in any infrastructure in those particular countries. For the French, they were out there to take and take and take and take and take. And even till today, we still have the same kind of a relationship, which is parasitic, with the French and these colonies, countries that were colonized by the French, are still being used in the continuation of colonization. Resources being taken from countries such as Mali, Burkina Faso. You see in West Africa, there is always a coup. You'll hear of a coup. I bet even perhaps this year you might hear also of a coup happening. But this is a little bit more about Madagascar. Then we shall talk about the main topic of the day.
Its independence from France, it struggled under the leadership of one incompetent government after another. A series of civil unrest and political chaos ensued. When ex-yogurt peddler Magravalo Manana took over as president in 2001, introducing new currency, rules, and reduced the country's foreign debt by $20 billion, Madagascar's future looked bright. Unfortunately, he's been ousted from office and the country is sliding back into political chaos. Number 9. Only 11% of the country's roads are paved. Traveling in Madagascar takes time, not only because it's a large country, but also because of its underdeveloped and poorly maintained infrastructure. According to the World Bank indicators, Only 11% of the total roads are paved. Most of the roads are either extremely bumpy or potholed and muddy. During the rainy season, many of them are impassable, forming huge obstacles to travel. Most car rental agencies only allow car hire along with a driver.
Or whatever, when you look at this particular kind of a situation with infrastructure and the roads, it also reminds me of the DRC Congo, where you would actually take a very, very long time, even covering a distance of about 200 kilometers. It will take you almost probably so many days because the roads are impassable and the government has not done that much. And if you also consider the DRC, it's large in size and also has a lot of resources. So you would see, if at all the resources are to be used right for their own people, maybe perhaps it will be able to upgrade the infrastructure. But once again, we go back to the same problem of poor leadership and the corruption that has made these countries stuck in the same places they were maybe about 30 years ago or even 40 years ago.
Number 10. 7.75% of the world's baobab trees exist only in Madagascar. There are only 8 species of baobab trees in the world. One of them is found in Australia, the other in mainland Africa, and the other 6 only in Madagascar. For the most photogenic baobab moments, head to the Wild West country around Marundava. There you'll find the famous Avenue de Baobab, where 24 trees rising up to 90 feet in the air line the dirty path heading to Beloni's Tiribihina. As a little reward for sticking till the end of this video, here's an extra bonus fact for you. Number 11. The president of Madagascar has the longest surname than any other president in the world. The former president of Madagascar made it to the record books as the head of state with the longest family name. Due to how complicated his name is to pronounce, we are going to spell it out on the screen for you to take a shot at pronouncing.
They just call it Raj because almost everyone in Madagascar has a long last name, and therefore you will not even know how to pronounce it. You just might look for just a short name or just a nickname or maybe just shorten it so that you can be able to pronounce their names. But yes, Madagascar has a long way to go. If you ask me, I think one of the things that should be addressing, just like any other African country, is the issue of corruption on the continent of Africa. And of course, if you look at the corruption index, because there's a organization known as the Transparency International, which gets to study or which gets to do the research on African countries, you would find that almost, that it's very, very rampant to a level that almost everyone, has had a situation or has had a situation where they have actually encountered directly or indirectly, where they have encountered directly or indirectly this matter of corruption in their day-to-day dealing, or maybe by someone else that they already do know. So this is one of the websites by Transparency International. And of course, the corruption in Africa, 75 million people have said to have or have actually been found to have paid bribes. So that is 75 million people. Most African countries do not have 75 million people. You'll find a country maybe such as Nigeria has more than 75 million people, Kenya about 60 million people. But combined, you'll find that 75 million people do get to pay bribes. And this is because it has been entrenched in the system. It's not like they're paying it out of the system, but it has actually been entrenched in the system, according to these reports by the Transparency International. And I actually say in many countries, you can pay off police officers to ignore any crime. However, horrific or devastating the crime might be, it's just a matter of a price. Name your price. And from that, you can get away almost with a whole lot of things. In Zimbabwe, an 9-year-old girl was raped on her way to school by a man who infected her with HIV. The police initially arrested the attacker, but then released him in secret. The reason, he was able to pay a bribe. Nearly 75 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are estimated to have paid a bribe in the past year. In the last year, about 75 million people have been involved with corruption. Some to escape punishment by the police or courts, but may be forced to pay to get access to the basic services, but that they desperately need. So, for example, if you want to get some access to some services, maybe perhaps you're applying for a permit, government permit that you might really need in your business, or maybe you're applying for maybe perhaps even a legal document that you need so that it can also help you get things done. For example, a national identity card. In some cases, you might find that the people who are supposed to ascertain that you are maybe, for example, the chief or someone else who's supposed to sign somewhere, they still also want to take some money from you at the end of the day. And that is why you're hearing about 75 million people. For me, I think 75 million people is a number that has been underquoted. If you ask me, this 75 million people is just a small number, and more than that, perhaps is actually being the case on the continent of Africa. But you will find that the fight against corruption on the continent is sort of somehow it has failed. It's a losing battle. If you do get to ask me to describe it, it's a losing battle for most African countries, simply because, again, like you said, it's entrenched in the system. It's part and parcel. It's not like you're doing this particular corruption on the sideline. You hear that the police, these are the individuals, or these are the people. One of the things that I've heard is that the police do get take praise because of the low pay. But I don't think that is even the problem itself. I don't think it's part of the problem, but that is not the whole problem. So you will find that what is happening on the continent right now is that every African country has set up what we call the Anti-Corruption Commission, or a commission to go and investigate and prosecute individuals that have been said to be alleged to have been involved with corruption, or even have been confirmed to have been involved with corruption. But the thing is, there is not any political goodwill, and that is why we do have the challenge. It's not any political goodwill, even from the leadership at the top levels, because even the leadership at the top levels is also engaged or involved with this corruption. You will not tell me that the police are picking or taking bribes, and some of this money, of course, would also eventually end up in the hands of these politicians, or in the hands of their seniors. The people who are actually above them in terms of the ranks. But there are also the colonial roots of corruption. You will not say, I could not actually blame these 100% on the way the system is working right now, because you have to look at the background of this whole situation. So when there was colonization on the continent, when there was the taking over, or the scramble for Africa, what happened is that these Europeans, the colonizers, all they came up as explorers. These are quote unquote explorers, but they were not really explorers. They were here to take advantage and to take over the land and the resources of the people. But what used to happen is that when these colonizers came, for example, with the French or the Portuguese or the British, what used to happen is that they would corrupt the minds of the local leaders with small gifts, quote unquote gifts, but these are bribes essentially. So they would actually bring these tokens. They were known as tokens of appreciation, or tokens of a friendship, or tokens of whatever. I don't know how they used to call them, but they used to come and give tokens, give tokens to these local chiefs. These were local chiefs, or the local leaders of different groups, all of different kingdoms. For example, with the Baganda, we did have the Baganda kingdom in Uganda. We also did have the Congo, and also in another different kingdoms. So what they used to do is that they used to come and find the community heads, or the heads of these different communities, and they would actually give them these tokens in exchange for quote unquote their collaboration. These are people who did betray their people by collaborating with the colonizers. So they would give them those particular gifts. And what did happen even after the ending of colonization on the continent of Africa? What used to happen is that the same colonizers, the French, the British, the Portuguese, what used to happen is that they used to divide the people and elevate a certain group of people. And then after they elevate them, quote unquote, put them on a pedestal, elevate them, they would also make them enemies. They would pitch in, or they would actually pit one group against the other group, and sort of show favoritism to one group, and then have someone from this group become the leader, quote unquote, a leader. But they actually install their own puppets. These are not actually even leaders. You might hear, oh, these are founding father, these are one who fought for the liberation of this country. But in real sense, it's the same colonialist, the colonizers that actually put these people and on those particular positions. And so at the start of corruption, at the start of these colonization, there was the element of corruption. At the end of it, there was also the element of corruption. So from there, find it deeply rooted in the system, where now these leaders also want to have, corruption goes hand in hand also with favoritism. I do believe it's like it's from the problem from the same root. So you really have corruption and favoritism in both sense from the start, and also post colonization or after independence. So the post-independence African countries inherited deeply corrupt institutions, the laws and values from the colonial and apartheid governments. In the majority of African former colonies, the colonial elite centralized political power, economic, political, and civic power, exclusively reserving jobs to the top in the public and the private sector, as well as education, only to a few fellow colonials or the people that were collaborating with them in that regard. At the time in the colony, the institutions should have served as watchdogs against corruption. The judiciary, the police, the security forces, and the rule of law selectively served the interest of the elite classes. And this is post-independence in Africa. So therefore, you would see also the root of this particular problem going way further, and it's deeper than just post-independence Africa right now, which is for many countries 50 years after independence. For other countries, it's maybe perhaps 40 years after independence. But you realize that the same problem that was inherited when they were coming up with these positions have actually been propagated. And therefore, that is why it becomes very, very difficult for the fight against corruption to be won, because it has actually been institutionalized and it's part and parcel of the system. For me, I do believe if you ought to have a fight against corruption on the continent of Africa that is going to work, I do believe what ought to happen is start with the younger generation. Tell them, let them know when it comes to the education system. Let's introduce a course or introduce a subject where people are meant to understand the cost of corruption. Because, for example, in a country like Kenya, we did have the president himself admitting that every other day, 2 billion is actually lost to corruption. Let me see even if I could actually play that particular clip. You can see the president resigning in his fight against corruption in Kenya, and saying that the country loses 2 billion shillings daily from corruption. And this is the head of government. This is a president saying that. Let me just play this. So you will see this is not someone who is really serious about fighting corruption. Let me just show these. These are president who is actually out there admitting that Kenya is actually losing 2 billion. And let me just show us these real quick so that you can see if at all there's any kind of fight. This fight should actually be started also in schools if there is any serious kind of an intent to be able to fight these from the younger generation. Because if kids come up realizing or knowing the consequences or the cost and the negative about corruption, then they will not themselves want to be engaged or to be involved with it. Because if you now go to the same grown-ups or the adults right now, you will not find much that will be done, because their minds have been wired in that regard. But this is what the president was saying, which is a shame.
It is still unbelievable, and this is one time I hope our reporting is wrong, that President Uhuru Kenyatta said during radio interviews yesterday the people in his government are stealing 2 billion shillings daily. 2 billion. That's how many zeros? If we can just turn to the screen. Yes, that's 9 zeros. But forget the zero. There's these zeros, and let us look at what this money can do to solve the ongoing nurses' strike in the country, for example. I spoke to the Secretary General of the National Union of Nurses, Seth Panyako, earlier, just to try and understand what it would take for the 30,000 nurses from public hospitals that he represents to get back to work. Well, he says if the government agrees to increase the risk allowance for the nurses to 15,000 shillings, they would be back to treating ailing Kenyans. That's what's standing in the way of them getting back to work. Now, in a month, that would be about 13.5 billion shillings, and in a year, roughly 162 billion shillings. Using the staggering 2 billion shillings lost in a day from President Uhuru Kenyatta's government, that would make it 730 billion shillings in a year, which is a third of the country's budget. And that, ladies and gentlemen, would pay the nurses risk allowance for 4 years. And
so if you actually look at these particular figures, which are actually staggering, and you'll see this is actually 730 billion in a year. After if it's 2 billion daily, then it means that's 730 in a year. And this is like you had that of these countries' budget. And we can actually, in a country like Kenya, where corruption actually leads to the loss of 2 billion daily, this means that if you were to put this particular back money in, and of course, we will not have these big government budget deficits that you hear about daily. Because I do believe the deficits are largely are also contributed to because of the corruption. For example, when it comes to the KRA, which is the Kenya Revenue Authority, and this is a body that collects the tax for the country, and you find that many people also do get to evade things like there is tax evasion simply because they are loopholes, and these loopholes are also being contributed to because of the corruption. But if people are not willing to have a genuine conversation about corruption, people, it's like a taboo thing. If you sit people down and you're discussing an important issue of fighting corruption, people will not take keen interest in that. They think, well, there's not much we can do. Personally, I just gave 100 shillings to this particular police because I'm a bus conductor, or maybe I just gave this to the police because I'm doing this and that. But if all these individuals, there's a calculation of the same amount of money that is traded hands through bribery or through corruption, then you will find that this is a whole lot of money that can save the problem, that can save the country from the problems that are facing it. For example, in the healthcare sector, like these a reporter is talking about, or like in the infrastructure. Getting to have the country have better infrastructure if this money was not being pilferaged through these corruption levels that are the country. But these are some of the thoughts, and these are some of the things that I'm saying. If you to have a proper kind of a fight against corruption, it has to also involve the younger generation, and also it has also to involve a proper, the judiciary. Although even the judiciary itself is corrupt, you cannot have people being prosecuted by the same corrupt judiciary. You'll find they will get away with it because they will have bribed even their way out of this system, justice system, and that is a problem that we're facing. So unless we have almost total reforms, I think there are some countries in Europe that have actually found ways of curbing corruption, which has worked. I believe Georgia at some point found a way of actually making sure that they have digitized their system so that there is not the direct trend of exchange of money. For example, different institutions, when you're going to apply for this and that, you not have to pay some money. You just have to do it through the system, and the money gets to the account through the system. But you might have this digitizing of the systems, which is also another good way to fight corruption. But the same systems are being operated by people. And if they are corrupt and they have the wrong mindset about facing corruption or fighting corruption, then you go back to square one again, which is also another different challenge.
Within their rights. That's just one thing that 2 billion shillings that is lost in a day can do for the nation. Nyere Kegwere. That's the only Kikuyu I know, and I hope I've used it appropriately.
This is a little bit of what happens with that, and that is the president actually admitting that Kenya is losing not all that much money.
Mdahalo kuhusu hela zinazotumiwa na serikali kupiga debe BBI ulikuwa umeshika kasi mno na hata kuhakikiwa na aliyekuwa mwaniaji wa kiti cha urais Ekuru Aukot ambaye alisema hazina ya kitaifa ili.
So I was just giving a small example with our country here, which is Kenya. But I would also like to show us also what happens with other countries on the continent. And Sister Michelle, as well, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I do not know who the heck all these are the different people are. I think these are Russian hackers that are trying to get onto chat. It's like a moth being attracted to the light. I have no idea who all these different comments are from. But nonetheless, the matter of corruption and the report that has been submitted in South Africa, of course, in South Africa, we shall also be letting you know what is happening with that. I shall also be letting you know which countries on the continent of Africa are supposed to be having elections this year. One of them is Kenya. I can tell you that for free, that in August, already people have started the campaign mode in Kenya. But I will be telling you a little bit much more about that and what other countries on the continent are expecting to have elections. But before then, let me go back to the same matter of corruption. I would just say the political goodwill is the lack of political goodwill is one of the biggest challenges. Lack of political goodwill to fight corruption. The other thing is the lack of the myth that corruption has no victims. They say that if you're involved with bribing this particular person and you get out of the problem, maybe perhaps you had actually you're on the wrong. When it comes, for example, to traffic rules, you are on the wrong, and you bribe a cop, you get out of that particular kind of a jam. The myth is that both of you have benefited. You have gotten yourself out of the problem. The cop has also gotten something, so it's a win-win. But this is a fallacy. This is nonsense because this is a myth that corruption has no victim. Corruption has a victim, and the victim are the citizens of the country, in whatever other African country you might name it. It might be South Africa, it might be Kenya. And one of the other things that is also facing a big challenge in terms of fighting corruption on the continent of Africa is a lack of capacity and the toothless watchdogs. Like I said, these are the watchdogs in the name of anti-corruption commissions. For example, in Kenya, we do have the Kenya Ethic and Anti-Corruption Commission, but this does not really have the power to investigate and the resources to investigate. Nor does it have the power to prosecute. You're just there, and what you can only do is prefer prosecution, or prefer a prosecution be brought up against an individual because you think that they have been involved with corruption. But really, these watchdogs are meant to be mere publicity stunts, and that is why you do find, for example, the Kenya Ethic and Anti-Corruption Commission is there. But ask yourself, how many people has it brought to book? Has it charged for corruption? And how much of the public funds have been returned to public coffers? None. But this is a commission that is actually getting paid every other month, and also did not have enough resources for them to be able to do the proper work they need to do. So more investigative journalism and protection of the whistleblowers should be done on the continent, so that we can have better understanding of what is happening. Because I've had journalists coming out and blowing the whistle, and other different whistleblowers on what is happening with different corporations, what is happening with the different government entities, but they are not really protected. The government, if you come and criticize the government for something that is doing, the government really, you will find people coming for you. You'll find extrajudicial killings are happening. So therefore, we need a witness protection, and also the protection of these journalists. Also, another thing is that the Western governments and business complicity in African corruption. You'll find, for example, the recent case with Jacob Zuma of South Africa. Of course, the alleged corruption case against him is that he was involved with taking bribes from a French company that was supposed to be supplying weapons to South Africa for their government. But what did happen is that this company, for it to be given this contract to supply these weapons in South Africa, they gave the president some money, and this is the president, the head of government. He actually was said to have taken some money to allow for this contract to go on. This tender, let me just call it what it is, a tender. And you find, especially through tenders, Kenya is now trying to fight and have a way of getting to streamline the supply chain, also to streamline the procurement chain. But what has happened is that, like I was saying, even if you want to digitize these chains, the procurement, and make sure everything is if people are still keen on conducting corruption, even when these systems are digitized, you will find that will not be a solution. It will not be a lasting solution to help anyone. But in South Africa, I want to bring this particular matter over South Africa, and I tell us that in South Africa, a commission was actually set up to bring a report about corruption in the country. But this is also ironical once again, because if the president himself, who is receiving these reports, at some point he was also implicated in a case, and he went before the House Commission to give his view on, or to give his report or his testimony on his part. But it's the same problem president right now who is receiving the report on corruption in South Africa. And I don't think this is the right man to lead this fight in the battlefront against corruption in his country or anywhere else. But let me play a little bit more on the same so you can see what's happening now with that. I hope I'm able to share this particular one.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa received on Tuesday the first installment of a long-awaited report on corruption in the country. The report is the result of 3 years' work looking at the extent of corruption during former President Jacob Zuma's tenure between 2009 and 2018.
This is what I would call a defining moment in our country's effort to definitely end the era of state capture and to restore the integrity, the credibility, and the capability of our institutions, but more importantly, our government.
The first part of the report deals with corruption and mismanagement at the heart of South African Airways. Cyril Ramaphosa described this report as a defining moment.
We've got so many agencies in our country who may have a sense that there are certain things that they've either been looking at, investigating over a period, and the report either confirms or consolidates their thinking. They should go ahead and act as they are motivated. But as for us in government, as I said, we will not really be commenting on the report until we have applied our mind on the report and we've looked at it.
The full report covers three main areas, including state contracts and sponsorships and corruption at the heart of the Tax Revenue Service. The South African president said he would only comment once the full report is known.
And of course, I was just saying that some of the time you find out these stands to be public, mere public publicity stands to make it seem as if the government is really serious. But if the government is serious, we should have these culprits are being brought to book. We should have individuals are being locked up for many years in prison, and also their assets are being recaptured and are also sold or captured, and also these money being put back into public government coffers. But of course, like I said, there are many challenges to fighting the corruption on the continent. Nigeria actually qualifies as the most corrupt country. Angola also qualifies as another very corrupt country. Kenya qualifies as a corrupt country. Uganda qualifies as a corrupt country. We also do have South Africa. Of course, that also makes it to the list of the top corrupt countries. Apart from that, we also go into West Africa, and you'll find other corrupt countries in the continent. We do have what is known as the Transparency International Corruption Index on Africa. You can be able to see what countries really I'll make it to the top of the list. But at the end of the day, even a government is serious about development of its own country. I believe the number one agenda should be fighting corruption in such a country. Rwanda has been doing well for itself. I also believe Tanzania has been trying, but Rwanda, I think, would be the model for the continent of Africa when it comes to fighting corruption. Because even if you are at whatever level of government and you have actually been involved with corruption, either from these government tendering processes, or either from sponsorship for the government, or either from these tax evasion schemes and other different kinds of avenues where corruption is rampant, then he will be held accountable in Rwanda. But apart from Rwanda, I have not seen a strong kind of a push, strong political goodwill by the government in any other African countries. It's sad to say. But once again, I do see that if any country is serious about the development of its nation and also the development of the living standards of its people, the one way to go is fighting corruption. Fighting corruption cannot be made into a song. It has to be actually led also by the people. You might say the government is not serious about the fight of corruption, but the government is not conducting the corruption on its own. Yes, it is at the higher level of government you find the corruption happening, but also at the smaller levels, at the grassroots, you'll also find the same happening. So if we don't have that partnership between the government and the public in fighting corruption, we might as well live to sing about the fight against corruption on the continent, even for the next 15 years or 20 years. You never know. But yes, I applaud the government of Rwanda, led by the President Paul Kagame. He has been doing well. I think there should be a model of fighting corruption on the continent of Africa. For now, we want to come to the end of our broadcast for today. I had told you that I will be letting you know what countries are expected to go into polls this particular year. And let me just do that briefly so that you can have an idea of what to expect on the political landscape when it comes to matters election on the continent of Africa. Some people talk about democracy and elections being a symbol of a democracy. But for me, I think there is also another fallacy when you talk about democracy on the continent. The number one country is Kenya. Kenya is expected to have its elections later this year in August. So around that period of time, there will be a whole lot of buzz going on about. In Senegal, they are also expected to have the elections in Senegal. So you shall also be looking forward to that. These are local elections. Local elections are in Senegal. Angola is also expected to have its presidential polls this year. We do have the incumbent president, João Manuel Lourenço of the People's Movement Party. He will also be seeking for a second term because he took over in 2017. I have not seen progress in Angola, apart from the whole taking of Chinese debt. I have not really seen progress. So I don't think these are leaders who might be voted in again. But like I said, elections on the continent are a sham. So Angola is expected to go to the polls. Once again, the presidential elections in Angola. And of course, those are some of the countries to look up to. And I see also what happens with them. Will there be a change of power, or will that be the same story, just another different day? So we shall be keeping tabs on that. and we shall be bringing matters as they also pan out in these countries. Once again, I want to thank you so much, Sister Michelle. It's always a delight to have you tune in, and thank you so much for your support with the Blackwood Fan Network and everyone else who has been tuning in on the episode for today. If you do have a question for me, feel free to shoot. You can find me, blackwoodfanafrica@gmail.com, and you can write to me, let me know how things are going. Or if you have a question, a comment, a suggestion, please make sure you bring it up, and I will also get to, even if it's a question or something you might like to research a little bit on the continent, you can engage us on the 54 Corresponding Show for that. But nonetheless, it has been, you also continue, the start of the year. We are still at the start of the year, and I do hope that you are actually going on well. Things will eventually work out if you stay positive and also work towards your goals. Eventually, things will actually shape up, and I do know that we will all be all right. This has been a 54 Corresponding Show. Till next time, much peace and love. I want to say kwaheri. Sister Michelle, wishing you a productive remaining part of the day, and also everyone else that was with us. We love you so much, and we also appreciate you.